Did you know that on October 27, 1962, the world came within one decision of nuclear war? A Soviet submarine commander prepared to launch a nuclear torpedo at American forces. The order required 3 officers to agree. 2 said yes. 1 officer refused. His name was Vasily Arkhipov. That single refusal may have prevented a global nuclear catastrophe. But that moment was only one terrifying chapter in a conflict that lasted 45 years. A war with no official battles between the superpowers, yet millions died. This was the Cold War. But here's what most people don't realize. The Cold War came even closer to nuclear war than this. Stay with me, because what happens next is the moment that terrified both superpowers. In 1945, the Second World War ended. 2 nations emerged stronger than all others, the United States and the Soviet Union. They had been allies against Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany, but their alliance was fragile. Their political systems were fundamentally opposed. The United States represented capitalism and liberal democracy. The Soviet Union represented communism under a single-party state led by Joseph Stalin. During the war, Soviet forces pushed west across Europe, liberating and occupying territories previously controlled by Germany. By 1945, the Red Army controlled much of Eastern Europe. Countries like Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia. Stalin wanted these nations as a security buffer zone. The Soviet Union had suffered devastating losses. Over 27 million Soviet citizens died during World War II. Stalin believed a protective belt of communist states would prevent another invasion from the West. But Western leaders saw something different. They saw Soviet expansion. In 1946, former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill delivered a speech in Fulton, Missouri. He warned that an iron curtain has descended across the continent. The phrase described a divided Europe. Western Europe remained democratic and aligned with the United States. Eastern Europe fell under Soviet-backed communist governments. Tensions escalated quickly. In 1947, U.S. President Truman announced the Truman Doctrine. Its message was clear: the United States would support countries resisting communism. This policy marked the beginning of containment, stopping the spread of Soviet influence. That same year, the United States launched the Marshall Plan. More than $13 billion was sent to rebuild Western Europe. The Soviet Union rejected the plan. Stalin forbade Eastern European countries from accepting the aid. Europe was now economically and politically divided. Germany became the first major battleground of the Cold War. After World War II, Germany was divided into 4 occupation zones controlled by the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and the Soviet Union. Its capital, Berlin, sat deep inside Soviet territory, but was also divided among the 4 powers. In 1948, Western powers introduced a new currency in their zones to stabilize the economy. Stalin saw this as a threat. In June 1948, the Soviet Union blocked all land routes to West Berlin. Food, fuel, and supplies could no longer reach the city. More than 2 million people were trapped. The United States responded with the Berlin Airlift. For 11 months, cargo planes flew supplies into West Berlin. At the height of the operation, a plane landed every 30 seconds. By May 1949, Stalin lifted the blockade. The West had won the first major Cold War confrontation without firing a shot. At the end of World War II, the United States possessed the world's only atomic weapon. These bombs had been used against Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. But the monopoly did not last long. In 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb. The nuclear arms race had begun. Soon, both superpowers developed hydrogen bombs. These weapons were hundreds of times more powerful than the bombs dropped on Japan. Delivery systems advanced rapidly. intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, strategic bombers, and submarine-launched ballistic missiles. This strategy became known as mutually assured destruction. If one side launched nuclear weapons, the other would retaliate. Both societies would be destroyed. Paradoxically, the fear of total destruction helped prevent direct war. The Cold War soon turned hot in Korea. After World War II, Korea was divided along the 38th parallel. The North became communist under Kim Il-sung. The South was supported by the United States. In June 1950, North Korean forces invaded South Korea. The United Nations, led by the United States, intervened. China entered the war on the side of North Korea. The fighting became brutal. Cities were destroyed. Millions died. By 1953, the war ended in a stalemate. The border remained near the 38th parallel, where it still exists today. But the most dangerous moment of the Cold War was still ahead. In just a few years, nuclear missiles would be placed only 90 miles from the United States. For 13 days, the world would hold its breath, and one wrong decision could have ended civilization.
If you think this was the most dangerous moment in history, wait until you see what almost happened next. In 1959, communist revolutionary Fidel Castro took power in Cuba. The island soon aligned with the Soviet Union. In 1961, the United States attempted to overthrow Castro during the Bay of Pigs invasion. The operation failed. The Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev saw an opportunity. In 1962, the Soviet Union secretly installed nuclear missiles in Cuba. American reconnaissance flights discovered them. President John F. Kennedy announced a naval blockade around the island. For 13 days, the world stood on the brink of nuclear war. Finally, a secret agreement was reached. The Soviet Union removed the missiles from Cuba. The United States secretly removed nuclear missiles from Turkey. The crisis ended, but the fear remained. Another major Cold War conflict unfolded in Vietnam. Vietnam had been a French colony. After World War II, communist leader Ho Chi Minh fought for independence. The country eventually divided into North Vietnam and South Vietnam. The South supported the United States. By the late 1960s, more than 500,000 American troops were stationed there. The war became one of the longest and most controversial conflicts in American history. After years of fighting, the United States withdrew in 1973. In 1975, communist forces captured Saigon. Vietnam was unified under communist rule. The Cold War also extended beyond Earth. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite. It shocked the world. The United States responded by accelerating its space program. In 1961, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human in space. But in 1969, the United States achieved a historic victory. Astronaut Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon during Apollo 11 moon landing. The space race symbolized technological competition between the superpowers. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union faced severe economic problems. Reforms introduced by Mikhail Gorbachev attempted to modernize the system. Policies called glasnost and perestroika allowed more openness and restructuring. But the reforms also weakened Soviet control over Eastern Europe. In November 1989, crowds gathered at the Berlin Wall. The wall had divided the city since 1961. Suddenly, the border opened. People crossed freely between East and West Berlin. Citizens began tearing down the wall with hammers. The Cold War was collapsing. In December 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved. 15 independent republics emerged. The Cold War had ended. After 45 years of tension, the ideological battle between the superpowers was over. The Cold War never became a direct war between the United States and the Soviet Union. Yet it shaped every continent, fueled conflicts around the world, and placed humanity under the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. For nearly half a century, peace existed, not because nations trusted each other, but because they feared what would happen if they didn't. History's most dangerous war was the one that almost happened. On Echoes of Knowledge TV, we break down the hidden stories, the near disasters, and the moments that almost changed the world forever. Click the next video now because the Cold War didn't end the way you think it did.